when you're down, like down with and aligned with your decision, because you know this is just the experience that you want to have, and you give yourself permission, then you also don't fear other people's direction, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So it's just an experience. So to those people listening, if you're feeling that, you're here and you're in that dichotomy of your head and your heart pulling against each other, like you can just make a decision. I'll maybe help you get to that point as well if we go there, but don't think that there's a right or wrong. So most people hold back because they don't want to make the wrong decision. There may or may not be a decision that is more aligned with that compass of that heart. And you might be thinking, but I can't tell which is my head and which is my heart. Well, guess what? Sitting there in indecision is not going to help you know the answer either. You know what's going to help you? Taking a step forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dichotomy podcast. This is a show dedicated to exploring the dichotomies we experience in business and in life. My name's Reid, and I'm a guy who's incredibly fascinated by understanding why we make the decisions we do in life, and ultimately how do we lead a good life. As a business owner, I get the pressures of managing business, family, money, health can create great inner conflicts around what we actually want out of our business and our lives. This podcast is dedicated to exploring just that. I hope you enjoy it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Reid, and welcome to another episode of the Dichotomy podcast. Today's episode is with the very lovely, the very charming, the very charismatic Amber Hawken. Now, Amber and I know each other from my Brisbane days, where I spent the last 12 months in Australia. And I wanted to get Amber on the show because, well, frankly, she's a clever cookie. And she's particularly a clever cookie in understanding emotions and understanding the world around us and basically how to lead a good life, which is very much the purpose of this podcast. Let me tell you a bit about Amber. So Amber is the founder of a couple of businesses. One is a multidisciplinary business in really psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, deep state repatterning. And in all of those fields, she's a qualified therapist, which essentially means she knows a lot about a lot of stuff, particularly when it comes to navigating emotions and navigating the journey of leading a great life. She works with clients all over Australia in the course of doing that, people who are running small businesses right the way through to CEOs of large companies that are, in some cases, doing billions with a B in revenue. So she's got a lot of credibility in each of those areas. She's also the founder of a business called Calm Mind Project, which is an initiative based on building awareness, emotional resilience, and empowerment within individuals, and particularly kids, through mindfulness and conscious purpose. She's also the author of a book called The Unfuckwithable Life. Yes, you heard that title correctly. The Unfuckwithable Life, which is a beautiful title to be able to say on a podcast with emphasis. So as you can clearly see, Amber is a clever cookie when it comes to this kind of stuff. And so I was really excited to get her on the podcast. And I think partly why I was so excited was because when you read her bio, one of the things that she says is, quote, "I have spent most of my life in the paradox of asking myself questions that are way too deep and then laughing at the seriousness of it all. Most of my waking hours are spent using people and the universe as a puzzle to be figured out," which is essentially saying that Amber is just my kind of person. We kind of both geek out at this sort of intersection of human potential and personal development and entrepreneurship. As a business owner herself, she gets the challenges of running a business and all the kind of emotional stuff that goes around that, from things like, in this conversation, we talked about, finding your spark, feeling really alive, and then on the other end of the spectrum, feeling numb. How do you balance that? How do you kind of master that dichotomy, which I think for many of us, I could really relate to myself, and I think many people struggle with, is that feeling of aliveness, but also kind of getting stuck in a bit of a rut and feeling a little bit numb. We talk about things like ego. As a business owner, is that necessary to have, and how do we kind of balance and manage the need to have ego in business and also the need to be able to strip away and dissolve ego as well? It was an amazing conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Amber Hawken to the show. If you want to join a community of ambitious and driven entrepreneurs, mavericks, change makers, those kind of people, then can I encourage you to head to my website, www.mikejamesreid.com. And that's Reid spelled R-E-I-D. You'll find a whole bunch of resources to be able to connect with me and a community of entrepreneurs that are up to something in the world. So head on over to www.mikejamesreid.com. Amber Hawken, thanks for jumping on the show.
Mike Reid, I'm super honored. Thank you so much for having me.
I was saying to you off air that I always really, really enjoy our chats and hanging out because you have such a cool view on the world, and based on the work that you do, your ability to be able to kind of understand the world, emotions, yourself, and help other people kind of navigate their own emotions is really, really amazing. So I'm looking forward to some of that coming out in today's episode. But maybe if I could turn the tables on you a little bit and ask you a question that I'm sure you ask your clients on a regular basis, which is one word opener. How are you feeling?
Oh, I feel really alive at the moment in life. I feel like it is shaking me, so there is no other way for me to describe that. Okay, I'm aware. My eyes are open. I promise. Alive.
Awesome answer. Tell me more about feeling alive. What does that mean to you? And can you maybe sort of give us a bit of context as to why you're feeling so alive at the moment?
Yeah, cool. Well, I guess the word alive came to me. It's not so much probably because my heart's beating. If we look alive up in the dictionary, I think it would have a very different meaning. But so thanks for helping me clarify that. For me, and I guess through my work, when one of the reasons that I love to be able to do what I do is almost that penny drop moment when I guide someone. I guess to describe what I do, I help people either process stuff that's stopping them by going really deep into perhaps old trauma or past things and getting to the root cause of something and unleashing that with a tool or something, or shift their perspective so even if it's just a millimeter, it changes the way they see the world so entirely that it changes everything about their life, not because anything outside changed, but because the inside changed. And it's that moment when you see them like click or spark. And that's what makes me feel like they have more life in them, because they can then experience more life, because before it was very clouded, or it was limited. It wasn't as open. They couldn't see everything. It's kind of like, if for any Twilight fans, before you're a vampire, it's all kind of blurry. And then when you're a vampire, everything's crystal clear. So that aliveness is in that sense, sorry, geek, there. But in the sense that I feel like, Mike, we're in a world where everyone is able to numb themselves. They're able to stimulate themselves, ourselves, me too, hand up, effortlessly, all the time. Open the phone and we can just scroll to try and fulfill our need for connection. But of course, that doesn't work at all. It's just that short-term gratification. Food, wine, sex, Tinder, whatever it is, there's always something available for us to just gratify ourselves slightly, which means we're always a little bit comfortable, which means we're always a little bit numb, which means that we don't have to feel discomfort. And then when we're numb to discomfort, we're also numb to experience deep, immense senses of joy and bliss, which aren't emotions. They're kind of states when your mind's very clear and you're in flow and you're connected. And when you begin to not play in that realm and you see the kind of shit that you're doing that stimulates you, like the little shitty habits that we think are nothing, the moaning and the bitching in our own mind is one of them, to try and get away from our uncomfortable emotions or anything that's uncomfortable. When we begin to become aware of those habits and remove those habits consciously, or they're removed from our life, I think that's what a lot of near-death experiences are, when we're kind of not seeing things. And we start to feel a bit, and then we feel we start to feel those discomforts and we start to really look at our shit and get comfortable with it and begin to meditate with it. And by meditate with it, I just mean just be with it without wanting to change it. And then we get the other end of the scale, that bliss. We get to experience that other end. So off air, I was talking to you about this life, this part of my life in this last 10 or 9 months or so really being about going to some dark places I didn't even know I had, and meeting some parts of myself I didn't even know were there so unconsciously. And that has hurt in a sense. They've been uncomfortable in a sense, but it's also made me feel very alive. It's easy to say now that I'm kind of in the clarity bit. So don't know, if you'd asked me that 3 months ago, I probably would have been like, I'm not coming on the show, but
I get it, right? It's funny when you're in the fog of working through something, right? Or you're just in that really dark place. It's like you can't see out of it, and it's only until you get to the other side that you get the clarity and the appreciation and the gratitude for that experience. But in the middle of it, you're just like, oh, just life sucks. At least for me anyway. Hey, Amber, I said this to you before, and I'll say it on air again. It's just, I love how articulate you are in your ability to be able to kind of bring together so many really interesting concepts. There's a couple of things I wanted to maybe highlight was I loved the word you used to begin with, alive, because when you said it's like that feeling of having that spark. And I think about my own experience in life when I feel really kind of lit up and inspired and alive. It's like, yeah, there's that spark, and you can sort of see it in me and you can see it in other people when they've got it. And like a continuum on the other end, you're right. It's like numbness is almost the opposite of that. And I suppose I'm curious to get your take on, the theme of this podcast is about exploring the dichotomies we face in life. For anyone that's out there who may be feeling a little bit numb right now for a variety of different reasons, where they might be feeling like their life circumstances are such that there's not much they can do to change them as much as they would like to, and that the path they've chosen has got them stuck in a dichotomy where perhaps, their heart is pulling them in one direction, but their head is keeping them on a different path. How do you, recommend or kind of could you share any experiences around being able to pull yourself out of that numbness and if in a way, if you like, master that dichotomy?
Well, firstly, if you're there, then you're not feeling numb, you're suffering. You probably realize you have been numb for a while. So congratulations if you're suffering, because at least you're not numb. Secondly, I love you, Mike. Thank you so much for creating this podcast. The word dichotomy is like, it makes me excited on many levels. I'd say a couple of things. Firstly, I'll talk about experience. Secondly, I would love to talk about the two options we have when we're feeling stuck. And so that's what I'm going to go into, I guess, for context, because Mike says that I am articulate. Sometimes I feel like I ramble. Mike, feel free to interrupt me.
Oh, well, I'll cover it. There'll be a chime or a bell or a horn or something.
So I guess first, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to say this, because this is really firsthand for me right now of embracing something that I teach so much, of being able to go through this sensation that you described, that I've been through it over and over again for the last couple of years as my business grows and expands. And you probably can relate to the same, that your compass changes. We call it soul, or you said heart, or some people call it intuition, whatever. And I think what's really important is to remember that it's always changing. So at one point, what we decided was right for us can very, very, very quickly not be out of alignment. So you made that decision at some point to go left, and then suddenly left, it doesn't match your compass anymore. You need left and 3/4. And it's just that we are so trained to go left and stay left and go through and push through. And if it's not hard, then it's not success, or you should just keep going or don't give up and blah, 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 that you won't turn left and 3/4, even though your compass is telling you to go there. You're like, no, but I turned left before and that worked this way, and we get stuck. And so it's just that choice became a habit. So firstly, I don't want, get out of shame. Stop thinking that you've made the wrong decision. Even if it was for 50 years, who cares? You're where you are. Great. You have understanding there. Let's go from there, because that 50 years it doesn't even exist anymore. It's literally just a memory in your mind. You have right now. That's it. You literally have right now. It's, when, Mike, that age-old question, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a noise?
Always been looking for an answer to that one.
Okay, cool. So what's your answer?
God, that is a great question. I would say Yes, it does.
Okay, cool. I'm going to argue it doesn't.
Please enlighten me.
And I mean, I don't know who's right or wrong, but this isn't because Amber has the answer, even though there's a tile company that said that makes me sound cool. It's if we think about experience of life, we're only experiencing what we're experiencing right now because in this moment, we're able to take in the information through our senses, but really nothing is real. It's like a matrix. We really do live in it. And we've got this incredible mind and this incredible experience going on. So if there's no one there to experience the tree, then there's no sound. It's because there's no one there to experience it. So of course it doesn't exist because we're not there to realize it, to materialize it, right?
That makes sense.
Cool. So if we're talking about, when I said if you're in a position right now and you're feeling in regret or you're feeling you want to get out of it, the first way to get unstuck is to just accept you're there, right? This is the experience. This is the tree falling. You've heard it. It's loud. It's a crash. You can feel it in your system, your physical body. You've got emotions about it. Great. Go from there. Don't live in the past anymore. Let that go and focus on the outcome. Secondly, I've said experience about 17 times, and there's probably a reason for that. It's one of my favorite words right now. It's one that I'm kind of going with because there's this idea about wrong and right, which is the right way to go. And in business, we're constantly going, wow, what's the right way? How should I market? What's my tripwire and how much should I charge for it? And what's my lead magnet from there to get them into the next, all these different rules about what's right and wrong, what's right for my business, what's wrong for my business. And we live in this realm of good and bad and right and wrong and success and failure. And it fucks us up. And it's great in a sense because it propels us forward, and the ego can be really healthy because we expand beyond anything we thought we could. But a lot of the time, especially if we're not aware that it's the ego driving us, it will drive you into shame and failure and towards goals that will never fulfill you. So we don't want to do that. We want to go from that compass and get out of the idea that there is a right or wrong decision. Everything in life is simply an experience. Can I ask you another question to help the listeners?
You may. I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
Keep going.
So my friend Susie Q, I'm making her up. My friend Susie Q lives in England, and she decides she wants to move to Australia because she loves the sunshine. And the sunshine makes her feel alive. It makes her feel vibrant and alive, and it helps with her creativity and ideas. So she wants to move to Australia. Now, Susie Q, if we look at spiral dynamics, that's something maybe you can put in the show notes, but spiral dynamics shows us that the 8th level of consciousness is that you don't need anything to change because you realize everything is absolutely perfect and everything is just kind of an experience from there. And she also has the emotional intelligence and self-awareness to create that experience of aliveness and energy and creativity in London in the wet and cold right now. So in the present moment where she is, she has the ability to create the same experience that she wants to get from the Australian sun. Susie Q still moves to Australia. Why? What's the point?
I'm so glad you asked me this question because I'm literally doing this exact thing, but in the opposite direction, not to London, but to Toronto, Canada. Why does she move? That's a really good question because, and I'm not deflecting here, I just want to talk it through and kind of talk it out in my head because I think about like my own thing. It's like there are a whole bunch of reasons why I want to be there, and I've grappled with this same thing around I should be able to be content and happy and no matter where I am, right? Mm-hmm. And yet I'm still drawn to a particular place because I think I'll be more content, more happy, more alive there. And it's like this, I've got this contradiction in my mind, like the kind of the self-aware part of me goes, I should be happy wherever, but my behavior doesn't match that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. For me, it's like I feel like the reason that she still does is because a part of her believes somewhere deep down that ultimately she will be happier moving there, and that part is greater than the part of her that is self-aware enough to know that shouldn't be the case. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I mean, you're 100% right if that's what she believes. That's definitely her reason, but she doesn't believe that.
Then I'm stumped. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, cool. So basically experience. If you're literally at that point, because we're human beings, so most of us would have come to the same conclusion of what you just said, knowing, what, I don't know why, but I would just be feeling more fulfilled or more content or more alive there, whatever. That's fine. That's absolutely, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I think there's a lot of us just need to give ourselves permission to be okay with that. right? That's just like, cool, give yourself permission and go. But I think, again, that logical brain wants a reason. Yeah, but why? And the pros and cons, and is this the right choice and what's the wrong choice? Like I said, fucks us up, right? Just go, make the decision. The thing is that once you get to that level of consciousness, which there's not many people on the planet who are there, but say that's where Susie Q is, her reason for going to Australia is because life is an experience to be lived. There's no right or wrong. She can go to Australia. Yes, she can create the same experience in London. She's just going to go to Australia. There's just no right or wrong. And when you take this pressure of right or wrong off your shoulders, it takes away regret, guilt, shame, and fear of failure, which is probably the 4 top reasons that entrepreneurs, business people, human beings screw themselves up and hold themselves back. Right? It doesn't exist anymore. When you're down with and aligned with your decision, because you know this is just the experience that you want to have, and you give yourself permission, then you also don't fear other people's direction, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So it's just an experience. So to those people listening, if you're feeling that, you're here and you're in that dichotomy of your head and your heart pulling against each other, like, you can just make a decision. I'll maybe help you get to that point as well if we go there, but don't think that there's a right or wrong. So most people hold back because they don't want to make the wrong decision. There may or may not be a decision that is more aligned with that compass of that heart. And you might be thinking, but I can't tell which is my head and which is my heart. Well, guess what? Sitting there in indecision is not going to help you know the answer either. You know what's going to help you? Taking a step forward, because you'll get feedback from life right away and you'll know, actually, that wasn't a lie. Thought it was my heart. No, it was just my head. Cool. Change. Be willing to pivot. Be willing to change. Be willing to just have the experience, whatever it was, because you went that way because you couldn't tell the difference. Then when you went that way and you had the feedback from life or the challenge, whatever it was, then you're like, now you have reference point for your intuition in your heart and your head, which is which. So now you have reference point for future decisions as well. And you get better and better and better at doing that. And there is no right or wrong. Again, it was all just an experience, because that's why we're here. We're only here to realize ourselves. You know, if you can apply that same thing to business, then you're rocking.
Thank you. That was super cool. So for me, I feel like this is the journey from going from the logical mind, the rational mind that's, kind of has the balance sheet of pros and cons, through to a way of living that's a far more intuitive, instinctual, way of living, where, you kind of move from experience to experience, moment to moment, tune your intuition as you go through, and then ultimately kind of, as you're moving on that journey, not hanging the expectation of, is it right or wrong, but just experiencing the experience for what it is. And ultimately, as you kind of go on that path, you should lead a more fulfilling kind of life. Is that fair?
Yeah, but if you're doing it because you want to lead a more fulfilling life, you're 100% on the mark, Mike. Like 100%. Like, let me say that first. But I want to be careful with the people listening, because if that term is thrown around and you don't have the awareness that I know that you have, I just hear it over and over again. People go, I want to do this because that's going to be more fulfilling. It then becomes like, when we're talking in a spiritual sense, the desire to be enlightened and get away from darkness is just the ego. If we apply it for a business sense, if the desire is to be fulfilled and pain free, don't own your own business. It's like, do you understand what I'm saying? The deep fulfillment, definitely. Well, I'm there. But don't ever do anything because, see, it's a paradox. I'm all about do it if it feels better, but feels better isn't so much an emotional decision. It's like, does it feel aligned? But don't do it because you want to escape a pain.
Speaking of paradox, I read on your kind of bio website that you talk about living in the paradox of asking questions that are way too deep and then laughing at the seriousness of it all, which I can relate to, because I get caught between those two worlds as well. What do you see as the difference between a dichotomy and a paradox?
I think dichotomy, we think too much about it, and a paradox is when you can sit back and see the opposing parts need to be in existence for everything to be flowing together. It's almost like the dichotomy is a bit of a fight and the paradox is understanding it all, the necessity. I don't know, I've never been asked that question. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it does. Because for me, I feel like the idea of mastering these dichotomies we face in our life is really about resolving the tension. And perhaps resolving the tension is recognizing the paradox.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe we're getting too philosophical, but cool. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Another question is, which is a topic that I'd love to get your 2 cents on, is given all your experience, Ams, you're a qualified psychotherapist, amongst many other disciplines like neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy, those are very, very, very big words, deep state repatterning therapist, all sorts of cool things, right? So you're like a highly qualified human being in understanding the mind and emotions. When it comes to working with your clients around identity, how should we think about our identity and not get caught in, this, I don't know how to describe it, but get caught between, thinking that we are what we do as opposed to, who we are underneath. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My favorite, and this is another paradox, but my favorite state and my most despised state is when I feel really lost, like I don't know who I am. And I always say to my clients, if they come to me, they're like, I just don't know who I am anymore. I was like, good for you. Good. And because the identity of our sense of self is what Buddha calls suffering. It's why Buddha says that the human existence is suffering. So as a business person, if you have your version of success, whether or not you know it, your blueprint of success has in some way, shape or form something to do with other people's opinion of you and your opinion of who you think you need to be enough based on your experiences of the world, and that's what drives you, again, you'll be screwed, because it's actually from a place of fear, because that identity will always choose what is safe to protect itself, which will always unconsciously guide you towards the things that will take you away from fulfillment and growth. So it's going to be a life of suffering. The more that you can let go of what it is to be successful, what it is to be enough, what it is to all of those things, and go against them and be willing to annihilate them all and lose them all and not even know who you are, the more that you are willing to be so lost in nothingness, the more liberated you'll be, the more intuitive your decisions will be, the more they will come from the heart of flow, the more they will be creative and innovative, and the more they will connect to the people that you want to help in the first place. So identity is the only part of us that is limiting, because when we're born, we don't have an identity. We don't know who we are. And I ask this question to my clients when they're trying to overcome something like perfection, or when someone throws the sentence at me or the limitation or the excuse, well, that's just who I am, then I come back with this, which is like, okay, was it who you are when you were born? And that sometimes they might say yes, and I'll ask and ask and ask and realize, well, no, it's something I guess I learned. Okay, so it's not who you are, it's what you learned. Where is that stored? It's stored in your brain, right? It's a memory. Okay, so it's a memory, and you've got an emotional muscle and you've got a neurological muscle, so you're just reacting to something the same way. Are you just a reaction? No. Okay, cool, great. So that's when we can change it, and when we realize it's not us, then we're willing to let it go. But if we want to hold on to our limitations, we want to hold on to our pain, we want to hold on to our stories, we equally want to hold on to these higher standards and these high expectations and these pressures and all of this crazy stuff. Both of them are suffering. If you want to grow and expand and reach people and help people and be innovative, you have to let go of your identity. You have to be willing to let it fall away. So it's like you are the only thing that is real is what's permanent. And the only thing that's permanent is that essence that we sense in a newborn that's still within you. That's what you are. It's not about who you are. It's what you are. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you. Can you maybe share a personal experience around that yourself? Have you ever gotten lost in an identity that you held for yourself, and how did you strip it away over time, and what kind of things could people listening maybe do to sort of cultivate that as well?
It's a really good question, Mike. I do, definitely. There's one that really props up for me. It's super relative to your particular podcast, but if something else comes out, I'll say it. But, you said before I'm great at articulating things, and I do have a really strong well-trained skill of analysis. And that means there's a lot of left brain going on. There's a lot of identity and a lot of mind there. And at times it really, really, really serves me. And I can be in flow in it, as in, like, if you ask me what I said in this podcast, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but I know that I'm in flow a lot of time because that's how I feel when I'm being asked questions. But what I'm saying is I'm fucking stubborn. And it can take a long time for me to realize that something that I'm really holding on to or something that's causing me suffering is actually an identity. An example of that is when I was incredibly humbled by my partner, who's very unwavering. He's one of the most solid humans I've ever met, and he's very unwavering in his truth. So and when I say truth, it's he's not speaking his truth, but he'll just be like, no, that's not mine, you own it. And there's no wavering from it. And I can talk about that if you want me to, that's personal, but there's a kind of an identity shift that really happened that might be quite relative to those listening, where I was a radiation therapist once. So I used to treat cancer. And when I was younger, I grew up, my family didn't have a lot of money at all, like really at all. I sometimes used to buy my own school uniforms from money I made from walking the dogs, and my own tampons and bras and shampoo and conditioner. And my parents would like get on the piss and smoke weed, and whom I love them very much. Thanks, Sharon and Dad. But that was my childhood, you know? So I really had this pain in me to never be short of cash, never be short of money. I never wanted to. So I specifically chose my career so I would have enough. And also so I would be smart enough. And because I really didn't feel that I got love from home, I guess, and this is very unconscious, this is from many years of unpacking, I was like smart and good at sport. So I would get validated outside. And the more validation I got from achieving and being first and winning and being smart, the more it fed my ego. And the more I was like, oh, this is so much pleasure. And when I'm the best at something and I'm really good at it and I'm better than others and I keep on going and I work harder and look at all this validation I'm getting. And that was a big identity for me. And I became a radiation therapist, and I got really great marks at uni. I got chosen to be one of the best hospitals in Australia at the time that everyone really wanted to, Royal North Shore, but I ended up going to Brisbane because I wanted to move state. And then two different things happened there. You go in at the bottom and you're basically like, oh, you're a new grad, you do all the shit jobs. You don't even talk to the oncologist. And I remember being like so shaken to my core about that because I was there and ready to help people and cure cancer. And then 18 months later, I decided to leave because I felt that system didn't treat the core problem. It just dealt with a symptom. And so I wanted to leave. And that was a really, really big decision for me because I had, from the age of 16, decided that's what I was going to be. And this is at, say, 22-ish, 22, 23. Mm-hmm. So it's like 6-7 years of building this singular identity of being a really smart, busy person who treated cancer, right? People would praise that all the time. It was like they frothed off it. And that was really hard for me because I literally did not know what I was going to do. I was a personal trainer. I used to run boot camps. So I had a second income that was literally a second full-time income. So I was fine for cash. But as far as like who I was, no idea. And that was terrifying. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I worried so much. But let me tell you, it shook me big time. And so instead of then, until I was something, then I was busy. I was busy trying to build my identity. And so people just thought I was busy, and it's just chaos. So how did I break that? To be perfectly honest, my practices of yoga and meditation in those days helped that because it helped me become very aware of the dialogue I could hear coming out of my mouth around it all of the time. And it's like I just got sick of my own bullshit, and I just stopped describing myself. And when I get interviewed in podcasts and people ask who I am, I always I don't get awkward about it, but I can tell that it's not the answer that they were looking for, because I'll be like, well, I don't know, because I won't identify with anything anymore. It's because it's so damaging, and I like to leave that open to nothingness.
I think it's really... So when I go to... Let me start this question again. When I go to a party or if I'm introduced to someone for the first time, I try and make a habit of not first responding with what I do as kind of the explainer as to who I am. And it's such a tricky thing to do because it's such a conditioned habit. And so can I ask, and this will help me, this is a selfish question, how do you get over the awkwardness of that? Like, can you give me some guidance or some feedback as to if kind of for me to cultivate that detachment from the identity of what I do. You got any suggestions?
What if no one ever knows what you did for the rest of your life? Will you die?
Good question.
Are you going to die? If no one literally knows your title or what you've done or the impact that you made, if no one literally knows of your existence, will you die if they don't know what you did?
Certainly won't.
No. And this is the mind. We ask these really big questions of how do I get over this thing? It's like you're looking at it and you're making it out to be like it's a big thing. It's not. It's actually just so small. So I like to, one of my mentors, Haley Carr, she says it like this. It's called like a shrink technique, but she says, turn a mountain into a molehill. It's like, we're like, how do I get over the fact that I'm very attached to what people think? And trust me, it's a valid question. So many people listening to this will relate, but I'm serious. This is the laughing at it. It's like, it's really not a big deal. Like choose a better story. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, and I love that, right? It's fascinating to imagine going through life and, pondering that thing of, if no one ever knew what I did, what would happen? And it is a dichotomy between if you're a business owner or if you're an ambitious, driven kind of human being, you're out there like doing a lot of cool things in the world, etc. We've kind of got this need to be able to constantly share and pitch who we are, what we do, all those kind of things. How, for the person who has this, I'm going to call it a philosophical bent on life and recognizes the tyranny in being attached to this identity that we have about ourselves, how do you recommend someone navigate that while still maintaining that kind of contribution in business and that position in business, etc.?
I think there's a time and a place, and I think it's perfectly okay to communicate what you do. Just notice if you're attached to it or not. It's a balance. We're human beings. I went to an event recently with Ronsley Vaz, one of our dear friends, and everyone knows who Ron's is there, and it was really cool to be there. And I'd never been to one of these events. It was a Tucky Moore event, and people ask you all the time, "What do you do?" And that's literally like the question, and it's great because it's business and it's networking. And I would say I own 2 businesses. One of them teaches mindfulness and meditation in schools. And like, that's enough. Then people can ask the next question. But I'm probably a sucky business person in that sense that I don't really have an elevator pitch. I never have. I've never done it. I've never done it in my life. You could probably help me with that. But it's, if you want to do this and do it in a way that feels more aligned and you kind of just, when you're listening to this, you're thinking, you know what? Yeah, I don't want to identify with that. Don't think that there's anything wrong with it. But if you want to do it, then perhaps do it in a way that makes you feel quite connected to someone, because make the goal not for you to sell yourself to someone, but for you to connect to them, because that's what you need to do anyway. So change the idea about why you're communicating that and what you want to communicate to doing it with connection, because then it's going to be aligned no matter what. And if people connect with it, they're going to do business with you.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a nice little distinction, changing the goal from selling to connecting. I read on some of the propaganda online that most of my waking hours are spent using people in the universe as a puzzle to be figured out. No, this is on your website. It's being facetious. But where did this thirst for understanding come from? Can you pinpoint it?
No, I mean, I've definitely asked myself this question plenty of times, and people have asked me a lot in interviews. And I really, truly, truly, truly believe, Mikey Reid, that we all have a soul essence and kind of some work here to do. Sorry to those in the business world that are like, what is this chick on about? But it's the truth. I have worked with multi-million and actually, one of my clients actually was a multi-billion-dollar client. It didn't pay me $1 billion, but his company earned billions. And it wasn't until he got to understand that part about him, until he was, that's what really took him to the next level of understanding. It's because it helps you detach from chasing those balls and you begin to see things before they occur. So that's why this is helpful in business for those listening, right? It's almost, shedding all the conditioning away to go, what is it that compass, that intuition, that heart? Because this is the dichotomy, right? What's that heart in me, and how is that? It's almost like this variation of this essence. So I said before that we all, when we hold a newborn or we're around a child, and if you ask, I mean, for you, okay, so how would you describe a newborn baby? How would you describe to them who they are? What would you literally, if they could understand you, what would you say? If you had to teach them who they are, what would you say?
Another question where I feel a bit stumped. I don't know. Don't know how I'd answer that. All they are is like a blank canvas, right? It's like it's just the essence, right? Yes. As you say, there's nothing else left. It's just that's pure essence.
Yeah. Most people will say essence, they'll say potential, they'll say energy, they'll say love. And these are like, I asked this question to a room of aviation pilots, men, and they all similar questions. It's similar answers. It's like when we really tap into it, they're like, well, they're just potential. They're just, I don't know, love, energy, whatever. And you can't help describe it in any other way because there just aren't any words for it. And so we're spot on there. Again, that still exists. And that's really what we collectively share and how we intertwine, and we're super connected to everyone, is we all share that. But if you're, near babies in that essence, it's almost like we've got this variety. So long story short, I have definitely always been curious, and there was the influence of a lot of, pain, that I would have called it pain in my childhood, or experiences that were really challenging when I was younger that made me even more curious about why we suffer or why we do what we do. Try to understand why my stepmother was so manipulative or abusive in the way, so we could, and in all due respect, like I love her, I do, but we all have these things, and they played out in my childhood with her and between us. And we had this tension between us that would play out, and there was a lot of suffering that went on both halves there. And that always made me very curious, and the way that my dad interacted and why my mum was an addict. And so I think those things sparked the curiosity, but I think it was really there. And I almost feel, and I'm pretty happy to say out loud, that I subscribe to the reality that at some level, I think that essence, that intelligence, just like the intelligence of a flower knows, the intelligence that's inside a flower knows to grow into a flower. And that we share that intelligence. It's like that intelligence is within us all, and it kind of chose this life and this person and this thing to experience the world in this. And then I just ended up in this job because it kind of matched what I naturally in my essence do. I know that's a really deep, philosophical, quite woo-woo answer, but when I work even with really big businessmen, when we get down to that, businessmen and women, they're connected to it and they get it. It's we kind of have to come to that own realization ourselves, and it's undeniable. So I hope that makes sense.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I feel like the conversation we're having right now, compared to the conversation that a lot of people in business and a lot of, if you go online or if you look at a lot of training organizations out there, are talking tactics in how to grow a business, which is important, right? You can't not grow a business without the tactics. But I find as founders and CEOs and business owners, go through life, go through the process of building their business as they kind of scratch up more experience, etc. It's this kind of conversation that's really the difference between them going from that sort of stuck kind of level, hitting that ceiling, to breaking through to a whole new level, which is for me why I love these kind of conversations. I think that this sort of stuff, mastering this stuff, is as important, if not more important, than the tactics. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
I think you're 100% right. And it's kind of what I was saying earlier. There are so many different systems that really work. I love someone to help me remember to simplify a business idea. And there's no wrong in that. But if you only ever follow someone else's structure all of the time, and you think there is a certain system and there is a certain way to do absolutely everything all of the time, you're screwed. Because the bottom line there is there's way too many options. You'll just sit in confusion. You have to, at some level, be able to differentiate which strategy and which pivot is for you that aligns with that. Like, we're here. We have to come to terms with the fact that, the concept of business and the concept of money is just that. It's a concept. But these things create the beautiful challenges and the confusions and the pain and the struggles that help us come back to the understanding we are just here as an essence to experience life. So that's kind of what the identity is as well. It's the struggle to help us realize ourselves. So you may as well align that more and more and become more and more aligned with your awareness so that business becomes a beautiful, flowing, fun experience while you're contributing.
Ems, would you say maybe this is a funny or a loaded question, but would you feel you a confident person in life?
Can you tell me what confidence means to you before I answer that?
Well, maybe I'd be curious, based on whatever it means to you, maybe if you could sort of explain what it does mean to you. Do you feel you kind of walk through life with kind of more confidence or more self-doubt, do you think?
Let me explain what confidence is before I say it. The answer is more self-confidence, but it's only because I choose to believe, because everything is just a choice anyway, and anything only means the meaning we give it. I choose to believe that I'm always in the exact right place at the exact time that I need to be learning exactly what I need to be learning. And that's a choice. That's a decision that I make to choose to experience. And that's how I experience life. So I always have confidence in everything I do because I know that, because I've subscribed to that. And that's a decision that I've made, while also being open to being humbled. It's not always easy because my ego doesn't always like it, but
that's an amazing answer. Because for me, I often have, lots of moments where I feel a lot of self-doubt. If there was a mirror that was held up to me by people who are very close to me, business networks or otherwise, people who know me well, who, we have kind of very sort of confidential conversations, all that kind of thing, based on, what I put out to the world or produce in terms of outcomes, results, that kind of thing. Yet sort of the inner dialogue is often, there's kind of more tinges of self-doubt than confidence. And I think that's an interesting way to reframe it, to kind of feel that is that, at any one point in time, you're always in the right place to, be receiving the lesson or the learning that you need to grow and develop and etc.
I just realized I didn't clarify what confidence meant, and I don't want to confuse anyone. Do you mind if I say that?
You may, please.
It triggered me because you said it. When you're, talking to someone and, having these conversations and the mirror held to your face, there might be more self-doubt than self-confidence. Confidence is self-trust, right? Confidence is really just about trusting ourselves. And so that's why I feel confident, because I trust that things are an experience. So it's not even really about trusting myself, because there are, especially this year, I want to share this just to be relative. Like even the past 3 months, I have been like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Who am I? Like going through one of those really big things while simultaneously understanding I'm exactly where I need to be. And so I have the confidence in moving forward, and most of all the confidence in kind of not throwing it all in and spiraling. So it's not that I always feel confidence. It's always that I'm trusting in life and in self, which gives me the confidence to keep redirecting or keep pivoting and keep going and keep moving and keep growing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
That's okay.
And if I could pick up on something else you said a little bit earlier too, and you mentioned the word ego. Do you think ego is necessary, particularly for people in business, the ambitious, driven kind of personalities out there? What does ego mean, and is it necessary for us to have it to be successful in business and life?
No, it's not. But that's a really, really, really big question. It's the paradox of no, it's not, and yes, it is. So it needs to exist for us to realize that it doesn't need to exist. Do you want me to go into that?
Yeah, please.
So say the goal in life, and you might not subscribe to this, guys listening, but let me ask you, if you're listening, and I'll ask you, Mike, as well, whenever we go through a really big challenge in life, something really, really tough, and we come out the other side, what happens?
Well, I feel good.
Can you go a bit deeper than good?
I grow and I learn.
What do you realize?
And I probably realize that the challenge is never as big as I thought it was at the time. And it's probably not as important as I thought it was. And but I, generally probably feel kind of grateful and appreciative after the event, not during. Kind of some of the things that come to mind.
Yep. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you couldn't survive, like emotionally, like a really traumatic one? It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. In that time, were you pushed to your absolute edge?
I was.
Okay. When you were at your absolute edge and you thought you couldn't go any darker, you couldn't go any deeper, what was the turning point? You don't have to tell me detail, but tell me about what happened inside of you just before everything shifted. Try and go to the exact moment that it went from a living hell to contentment or peace or okayness.
I think it was acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Always is. And it's almost acceptance of the situation. And when we accept the situation, what we do in that moment is we don't have an ego. Our ego is the only thing that resists, that doesn't accept the situation. That's why the ego is suffering. But the ego is also there, and it can be, the ego is there to then get to that place of surrender or that place of acceptance, which is realization. It is really enlightenment in that moment, is that non-thinking moment, is that absolute acceptance. Meditation is not about making yourself feel better or changing yourself or changing the world. It's about being with the world in a way where you don't want anything to change. That's what enlightenment is. That's what acceptance is. So when you accepted that, you had that moment of enlightenment, you realized yourself, you were in that self-realization moment, even if you didn't know it. That's, I'm putting words on something, right? But that's what was happening. It was that experience of just pure acceptance. It might have been a flicker, and then your head could have gone back into something. It doesn't mean you went out of it, but that in that moment, the bliss was the acceptance. It was the surrender. It was the self-realization. It was the complete acceptance. Acceptance and ego cannot coexist. Acceptance of what is and ego cannot coexist. Ego is our self-identity, and we need to hold our identities and our belief systems of what we think this should be or that should be or who we are, because we didn't have that when we were born. That's why we know it's bullshit. We created it. We created this sense of self. We created this sense of identity of how life should be and how it should look and how other people should be and all of this stuff. So no, we don't need it, because we could definitely do business without it. But if no one had an ego, we just wouldn't be here. The ego exists to help us go through that, the challenges and the suffering, the growth and all of this. This is what I'm saying. It's just an experience. So no, we don't need it, but then we'd all be at level 8 consciousness and we wouldn't be doing anything. We'd be enlightened. And that's fine.
I see.
I'm sure we're going there, but do you understand?
So if we were at that level of consciousness, or for anyone out there that may be striving for that level of consciousness, you're saying nothing would happen? We wouldn't do anything in the world or achieve anything?
Depends on what you believe achievement is. Firstly, you said strive and achieve, which are both ego-based, because they're wanting to be somewhere that you're not right now.
Interesting.
I know it hurts the business brain. It hurts the business part of me too.
It does. It really hurts that part of the brain.
But it makes it so much more fun when you do business, because you're like, well, if it doesn't really matter, and as long as I'm helping people, I'm loving it. And you know, money is abundance and it's fun. So sure, I can make some. Let's do this with that. Let's do that with that. It's not so scary. Money is kind of like going to sleep. It's easy. Let's do it. It's fun. Let's play with it. Make it easy. Make it simple. Make a good story about money, because you get to choose it anyway, because Mike the Spoon does not exist, for any Matrix nerds out there. You understand? Like, just make it more fun and light, and don't take it so seriously.
Hey, thank you. I've learned a lot in this conversation so far. And hopefully people listening have as well. Hey, Ams, maybe I could just ask a couple of little rapid fire questions, and I'm conscious of your time as well, because I know you got to scoot off. But if you could name one trait in yourself that you most like, what would it be?
It's probably my ability to let go. And the reason that I paused on that is because recently I said you had a partner, and for one of the first times in my life, that trait didn't really come up. I found it quite hard to let go of something. But in any other time in my life, I find it really easy. If something's not serving me, let it go. And especially something in myself, a belief in myself. Other than this recent experience that was really, really beautiful, it was like just humbled the hell out of me, and it was amazing. And that's why my partner is so amazing. I love him. But my ability, as soon as I see something that's not serving me, be that in business, friendship, whatever, gone. I can let go of it very quickly. And so in this situation with my partner, I couldn't see it for a while. It took me a couple of months to see it. And that was very humbling for me because of my work, right? But it's when it's very close in your face. So thanks to him. So yeah, does that answer your question? Sorry, I know this is rapid fire.
Yeah.
Go.
And on the other side of the spectrum, what do you most loathe or dislike?
I don't really loathe anything in myself, to be honest. I really don't. Because, I don't. I don't think I've ever been asked that question.
Really good answer. Thank you. And if there was a skill under the tutelage of any mentor in the world that you could learn, what would it be and with whom?
I don't want to. I want to just keep going by myself and figure it out. Did I tell you I was stubborn? I love to read different things. I do but the thing is, it's like I've read so much now that I just realize it's all comes to the same conclusion. And so because I kind of have this understanding that all of the most beautiful mentors that I've ever read things from scientific philosophers to, current day super brains, they all come to the same realization. So I'm just like, all right, well, I'll just keep chipping away at keep going back to there, keep going back to the realization, keep going there, getting lost in my humanness, keep coming back.
What's the realization that you keep coming back to?
That we're just here to experience life. We're just here to do that. That's our work, to keep shedding anything that's that and to grow through that. It's all very individual, but it's all very much the same. It's like we all have a gazillion, bajillion, infinite different pathways to get there, both in our own lives and in our individual, from each other, from you and me to the next person is so different, but also within our own life, there's infinite ways to get there. So that's the joy in it, right? So I just want to kind of chip away at that and see what comes and be on that path, because we're so already there. And I think that's what makes us, that's what's really cool. It's like we think we're so far away from where we need to go, but we're just right there already. And so it's just coming back to right there and right here over and over again.
One of the things that I have mentioned to a few friends lately is, for me, I feel like a big part of the purpose of life is we're all just really on a spiritual journey. And, we're at different stages of that journey. And as you say, there's a bajillion different paths we could take to get to where we need to get to, but we're all kind of heading towards the same destination, I feel. And it really, for me, that puts a lot of the business stuff, puts a lot of the day-to-day worries into context. And I feel like what you've shared around just experiencing, kind of embracing and embodying the experience is kind of very aligned to that. Amber, final question. If you could describe the purpose of life as a metaphor, what would it be?
Life is like a box of chocolates. No, I'm just kidding. I feel like I live through metaphors. The image of a butterfly in a chrysalis came to me, to be honest. Like a caterpillar, when it wraps itself in a chrysalis, it literally melts away. Like it releases this chemical thing and something happens and it melts itself. And that's what it always feels like. It's what continue to go through this cycle of wrapping ourselves up, going inward, melting away what's not the essence, and then we bloom and we fly off, and then it dies. But imagine that just keeps happening over and over and over and over again until we get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And then one time when we come out of the chrysalis, there's no butterfly because you're so light. I'm sorry if that was a shitty metaphor.
Seriously, that was the most beautiful, amazing imagery that I could have asked for. Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome.
That's put a whole new kind of image around the meaning of life for me. Amber, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Honestly, I forget when I'm on podcasts, but I totally forgot with you because you're so easy. It's such a beautiful thing. Like I'm really grateful. Thanks, Mike.
I think for anyone listening, they're going to be pretty interested to explore more of your work, your insights, etc. You yourself have an amazing podcast. Can you just maybe share for anyone that wants to dig a little bit deeper and connect with some of your stuff out there? Where's the best place to go?
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity, Mike. If you just look up Amber Hawken on Google, AmberHawken. It's amberhawken.com is my website. And Calm Mind Project, so like a calm mind, CALMMIND project, PROGECT.com. Both of those are my businesses. And there's fun stuff there. On both of them, there's a free fun download of one of the biggest things that I ever get questioned, like 5 days to a calm mind for people who can't meditate. So I feel like there's a lot of those listening. So maybe go check that out.
Okay, awesome. And also for those listening, just also check out Amber's series around Just Be You, which is the title of a podcast and YouTube series as well, which is really awesome. So Amber, thanks once again. Hey, so thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As you know, I just love talking life, business, philosophy with like-minded souls who think deeply about the world, their business, and how to live a good life. I'll be releasing episodes on this podcast as regularly as possible, at least twice a week for the foreseeable future, so stay tuned for the next episode. And if you want to join a community of ambitious and driven entrepreneurs, mavericks, change makers, those kind of people, then head to my website, www.mikejamesreid.com. And that's Reid spelled R-E-I-D. You'll find a whole bunch of resources to be able to connect with me and a community of entrepreneurs that are up to something in the world. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Oh, and one final request. If you've enjoyed this show, please give it an honest rating and review on iTunes or any other way that you listen to the podcast. I'd really appreciate it. It just helps the show get found and out to more people's ears who will hopefully love it as much as you do. Thanks so much again, and much love from me.